Howdy, welcome to the show and my really dark room. Before we begin, I just wanted to say that my pronouns are she, her. If you have a problem with that, which many people apparently do, you can go fuck yourself with a shingle. Now today's video is about recontextualization in the Star Wars IP and eventually Obi-Wan Kenobi as a show, i.e. the recently released Disney Plus series set in the Star Wars universe that I did a positive review on recently, because it is good. Be forewarned though that this video will feature spoilers for Obi-Wan Kenobi, so if you have not seen Obi-Wan Kenobi and want to remain unspoiled, I'd recommend skipping this video for now, because spoilers. So with that out of the way, here's a spoiler-filled video into Star Wars recontextualization and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Recontextualization is prominent in modern cinema and television. In our current movie and TV landscape, there is a major emphasis on sequels and prequels that fundamentally change how we understand an original work, often reframing how we view a given story. If anything, these movies and shows alter our understanding of the original text and change our viewpoint of those said texts forever. But there is an issue. See, these recontextualizations often have mixed results. On the one hand, you have a good movie like Dr. Sleep, a sequel of The Shining that follows and continues the story of Danny, who was just a child in The Shining but is now all grown up, because that's how time works. As a sequel, Dr. Sleep, a movie title that my tired ass approves of, recontextualizes the events of The Shining by portraying adult Danny's PTSD, his fraught relationship with alcohol to deal with that said trauma, and how he ultimately views his complicated memories of his dad. You know, the man that ultimately traumatized Danny and tried to murder him and his mom via an axe while quoting Johnny Carson. And it was ultimately really well done. Dr. Sleep handled themes of trauma and alcoholism with a lot of humanity, alongside being just a terrific thriller, one that really successfully added new context to a classic film. With Dr. Sleep, we learn how the events of the original Shining affected Danny as a character, and it was all pretty great as a result. It's an awesome recontextualization. On the other hand though, there are often bad recontextualizations in movies and television, new sequels and prequels that often dilute the work of the original. And for examples of this, look no further than Star Wars. See, the original Star Wars trilogy was a lovely slice of fiction. People loved it for its emotionally resonant storytelling and awesome world building that involved spaceships and magic warriors wielding laser swords, because it's Star Wars. But with that said, the prequel trilogy back in the 2000s devalued the original trilogy on a logical level, mostly because the prequels recontextualized the older Star Wars films in a way that was ultimately shit. Because let's be clear, it was bad. Even beyond the dull and monotonous story and the unlikable characters, the prequel trilogy was a miserable time due to how it recontextualized many events in the original trilogy that both attempted but ultimately failed to add narrative depth, as well as create narrative connections where there were none before, all via a weak script that kept pulling shitty narrative and world-building twists outside its ass. I mean, like, come on. Anakin Skywalker built C-3PO, Jedis are determined by midichlorian count, Boba Fett is a clone, Master Yoda uses a lightsaber? What? I thought he was beyond such things. Ultimately, these recontextualizations and many others caused the prequel trilogy to be panned, and while sure, Star Wars never had a preset narrative, even the original trilogy made shit up from movie to movie. See Luke learning that Leia is his sister in Return of the Jedi, which definitely recontextualized this kiss in The Empire Strikes Back into something that was grody, because ew, they're siblings. The original trilogy had a lot of creative merit despite having some missteps with the imperfect Return of the Jedi. Merit that was regularly undermined by the prequel trilogy's bullshit that made new yet unwanted changes to the overall canon. It sucked. The sequel trilogy recontextualized Star Wars as well, with better but still mixed results. On the one side, there were good and interesting changes, like how Luke Skywalker became a jaded old curmudgeon in The Last Jedi, or in how Han Solo's and Leia's marriage ultimately fell through, meaning that despite the triumphant ending of The Return of the Jedi, our heroes did not live happily ever after, which was a big recontextualization that ultimately worked. Narratively and thematically speaking, it was an interesting development. On the other hand though, the sequel trilogy did have a few blunders when it came to its recontextualization of past Star Wars events, mostly in the form of The Rise of Skywalker, a movie with all the horrible fan service that walked back many of the interesting developments of The Last Jedi, most notably Rey's lineage, because of course she's the granddaughter of Emperor Palpatine, rather than being a no-one as was stated by Kylo Ren in The Last Jedi, and this is a problem. See, the idea of Rey being a powerful Jedi with no meaningful bloodline ties to past important characters was narratively interesting. After all, lineage and legacy are an old and overused trope in Star Wars, and The Last Jedi's reveal about Rey's parents just being junkers who abandoned her was both devastatingly impactful character-wise and wholesome thematically. Devastating because Rey desperately desired to have an important lineage, one that she was ultimately denied. Yet the movie was wholesome because Rey eventually realizes that she doesn't need to be the daughter of some historically relevant Jedi. She can just be great on her own merits despite her humble origins, which once again was interesting and narratively upended our understanding of Star Wars. I mean, come on, we are so used to familial relations and bloodlines being also important to Star Wars stories. Yet here, The Last Jedi is claiming Rey, and many other people, don't have to be the daughter of a Skywalker to be great. Rey can still be worthy as a powerful Jedi despite her scrap trading beginnings on the planet of Jakku, showcasing that power and strength don't need to come from powerful familial heritage. It was a great development. It's just too bad that The Rise of Skywalker nullified the effect of this story. As we all know, Rey from nowhere became Rey, the granddaughter of Palpatine, bringing back the all too familiar themes of family and lineage that Star Wars had originally appeared to have outgrown. It was an unfortunate recontextualization. The Rise of Skywalker had other bad recontextualizations as well. Many important side characters were minimized, and Reylo became a thing in the most cringy and fan-servicey way. And with these cinematic miscues, among other things, The Rise of Skywalker was not a very good time. The recontextualizations changed the story for the worse. Admittedly, I could go on about the Star Wars IP's bad recontextualizations. Hell, I didn't even discuss the cinematic travesty that was the Book of Boba Fett. But the point of this video isn't supposed to outline Star Wars' various crimes against good scriptwriting. The purpose here is to lay the groundwork and detail all of Star Wars' past recontextualization miscues, which contrast with the execution of Obi-Wan Kenobi, a show that actually recontextualizes the Star Wars saga in a positive and constructive way. See, unlike so many previous Star Wars projects that devalue its past classic stories, much like how Burger King devalues the concept of edible meat, Obi-Wan Kenobi recontextualizes the Star Wars mythos in a way that adds value to the IP. Its characterizations, arcs, and action imbue the property with value rather than detract from it. A rare feat in the Star Wars canon, the show handled Star Wars recontextualization quite well. Admittedly, I touched on this a bit in my review of Obi-Wan Kenobi. As stated there, Obi-Wan as a character fundamentally changes between the interim years, starting at the end of Revenge of the Sith and ending at the beginning of A New Hope. See, the Obi-Wan at the end of Revenge of the Sith was defeated and lost, whereas the Obi-Wan in A New Hope had some spark of hope despite all the hardships he had faced. And as a show, Obi-Wan Kenobi delivers context as to what changed with the character and how. And now, seeing as this is a spoilery video, I'm going to divulge what happened here. See, Obi-Wan's initial downtrodden and beaten life outlook was caused by two factors. One was the trauma and guilt from how he felt due to Anakin's betrayal and transformation into Darth Vader, you know, where Anakin murdered the entire Jedi Order and installed a fascistic empire. It's kind of hard to get over that. And the other was an Obi-Wan dwelling on the fact that his side, i.e. the side of justice, lost. These reasons were a 1-2 punch as to why Obi-Wan starts the series feeling so hopeless. They were the reason as to why he was so damn sad. Things ultimately changed for Obi-Wan though, and to explain, let's start with Darth Vader. Throughout most of the show, Obi-Wan feels guilt and shame in regards to Anakin's fall into the dark side and the subsequent destruction of the Jedi Order and the rise of the fascist empire. He feels in some way responsible for the loss of his friend and comrade, as well as the fall of the Jedi. But in the penultimate lightsaber fight at the end of Obi-Wan Kenobi as a show, Obi-Wan bests his best friend in combat, and with Vader's defeat, Vader delivers a noteworthy monologue that alters the way in which Obi-Wan understood his past trauma. See, according according to Darth Vader, Obi-Wan wasn't the person responsible for Anakin Skywalker's demise. If anything, the one responsible for Anakin Skywalker's fall from grace was Darth Vader. According to Vader, he, not Obi-Wan, is the one who killed Anakin Skywalker, and thus Obi-Wan should not feel guilty over what happened to Anakin. It was beyond Obi-Wan's control. This revelation both gives context to Obi-Wan in A New Hope and recontextualizes Obi-Wan's approach with training Luke. In regards to the former, Darth Vader's personal statement gives Obi-Wan a sense of peace over what happened. It's as if he has settled his trauma, a development that carries over into A New Hope and Obi-Wan's characterization in that film. And in regards to training Luke in A New Hope, Obi-Wan told Luke that Darth Vader betrayed and murdered Luke's father, something that in retrospect sounded silly and was a definite lie given that we eventually learned that Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker are the same person. And when Luke challenges Obi-Wan on this white lie in Return of the Jedi, Obi-Wan gives an unsatisfying discussion of semantics, that despite being the same person, the personality that is Darth Vader betrayed and murdered Luke's father, Anakin Skywalker, which at the time kind of sounded like bullshit. It was a lie, wrapped in clever half-truths and a major logical stretch. It was pure nonsense. But honestly, Obi-Wan Kenobi as a show recontextualizes things. With Darth Vader's acknowledgement, Obi-Wan telling Luke that Darth Vader betrayed and murdered Luke's father carries a lot more weight, because that's what Darth Vader himself believes. I can at least understand where Obi-Wan is coming from now. It's actually pretty logical. Obi-Wan's characterization is further recontextualized by young Princess Leia as well. In fact, Obi-Wan starts the show by being a man without hope and believing things wouldn't get better in his lifetime, but his dealings with young Leia changed his bleak outlook. Through Leia's youthful take-action initiative, Obi-Wan learns that there is always hope for future generations to fix and improve the world, or the galaxy rather, for the better. Even if Obi-Wan might never live to see the day where the Empire collapses, he learns through Leia that there is always hope for the future. Leia's relationship with Obi-Wan Kenobi is recontextualized as well. For those of you who don't remember, in A New Hope, Leia sends the distress call where she pleads, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope," a moment that is more iconic than the Watchdogs had. According to A New Hope by itself, Leia knows Obi-Wan due to how he aided Leia's father in the Clone Wars. That's it. Her knowledge of him was only through reputation. But Obi-Wan Kenobi as a show changes this. In fact, the new show recontextualizes things by establishing that Obi-Wan and Leia already had established a rapport and formed a bond. Leia learned firsthand that Obi-Wan is a powerful and heroic Jedi who is capable and willing to come to her aid. And with that, we are given a new reason as to why Leia called on Obi-Wan's help in A New Hope, a reason that has a lot more emotional impact than what was originally stated in the original trilogy, because now Leia legitimately knows Obi-Wan and trusts him, which is a great recontextualization. Ultimately, these recontextualizations are overall beneficial to the Star Wars canon. Whether we are discussing Obi-Wan's change between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, how Obi-Wan viewed his past trauma with Darth Vader, or how Leia knew that she could trust Obi-Wan, these are all changes and recontextualizations that add depth to Obi-Wan's character and development. Hell, it even adds meaningful recontextualization in the sequel trilogy as to why Leia and Han named their son Ben. And while some recontextualizations don't make as much sense, see how Leia learns that she was adopted by the Organas, the pros far outweigh the cons here. Obi-Wan Kenobi, unlike many other Star Wars prequels and sequels, has recontextualizations that add value rather than detract. This is ultimately why I hope that Obi-Wan Kenobi does not receive a second season, even though there have been discussions regarding the possibility of a season 2 online, and even from people involved with the show, I remain hesitant. See, Obi-Wan Kenobi as a show was much better than it had any right to be. The show upended the idea that a good Star Wars sequel and prequel could not stand on its own, and I don't want a prospective season 2 to possibly ruin that, because it's become a theme for Disney to squander the potential of its more ambitious Star Wars projects, like how The Lesser The Rise of Skywalker walked back the more innovative elements of the more inventive The Last Jedi, or how the Book of Boba Fett had to drag The Mandalorian through its own muck. I just don't want the same thing to happen with Obi-Wan Kenobi, mostly because it's a good show on its own merits that delivers a lot more narrative meaning to the Star Wars property, and while sure the writers behind Obi-Wan Kenobi are talented enough to pull off a second season, season 2 is not needed. No further recontextualizations are necessary. And with that, that was the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like rating, share, subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment telling me what you think of Obi-Wan Kenobi and recontextualization in Star Wars. Also, please consider checking out my Patreon page. $1 a month gets you into my Discord server, and $5 a month allows you to start making review requests. The link to my Patreon is in the description. And speaking of Patreon, I just want to thank my patrons, particularly my high tier ones in David, Samantha, Devlin, Mom, and Morgan. Thank you so much for supporting what I do. Love y'all.